Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Film Festivals for Puppetry Films Roundtable, presented by Heather Henson's Handmade Puppet Dreams film series. My name is Alex U. Griffin, and I am the current producer for Handmade Puppet Dreams. For those of you who don't know what Handmade Puppet Dreams is, it is a traveling film series that promotes independent artists exploring their handmade craft specifically for the screen. All of our films focus on real-time puppetry and allow artists to build their vision, then breathe life into their dreams. We are so excited for this roundtable to have filmmakers Christine Papalexis, Angelica Robinson, and Shannon here. To start off, we will have a short trailer and/or reel related to the filmmaker, and then folks will talk briefly about who they are and what they do. Starting off, my name is Alex U. Griffin, and I'm currently producer at Handmade Puppet Dreams. Aside from that, I am a filmmaker who emphasizes in cinematography and puppetry content, and am based in Los Angeles and Iowa, but with services worldwide. And so here is my cinematography reel to help give a visual example of some of my work. If I can get it up. So actually, while we're doing that, because apparently there seems to be some little hookup, I'm going to ask Christine to tell us a little bit about herself.
Hi. Let's see. Wait, let me see. Hi. So I'm Christine Papalexis. I'm a puppeteer and a filmmaker, and I've been working in the film and television industry for many years. And I started out, however, doing live puppetry. I started out at Bob Baker Marionette Theater doing marionettes. And from there, I started doing hand puppets and then got more into film and television. But I always wanted to make my own film based on this live show that I had done several years before. So, but I just didn't, I don't know, I didn't have the support. I didn't have the financial well-being to do it. And so I decided to, that's when I applied for a grant through Handmade Puppet Dreams to be able to make my short film. So, and fortunately, I got the grant, which is fantastic, so that I could make the film. And it actually costs a little more than that, because filmmaking is kind of expensive, in case you haven't noticed. But it takes a lot of money to make a film, especially even a puppet film. Even with your friends helping out, it still costs a good amount of money. So. Anyway, and then, but this panel is primarily about film festivals, and I've been to quite a few film festivals, and well, we'll get into that, but but basically, my film has been in several film festivals, even one in Germany, and it's really, really fun to go to a film festival where people get to see your film. So I think that's enough about me. Unless you have questions, I'll hand it back to Alex.
Yeah, that's great. And to give a visual example, and since I'm still having issues with mine, I'll go ahead and use Christine's for both of ours, since I was also the cinematographer for this. And so here is a trailer for Christine's short film, Amaterasu. I think. Oh, there we go.
Woohoo!
Yay! Thank you. And moving right along, let's go over to Angelica. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thank you, Alex. I'm Angelica Robinson, founding producer, line producer, and executive in charge at Tell Me a Story Productions, where we specialize in multicultural edutainment centering around diverse leads. I have over 15 years experience of studio background, and I've worked in entertainment for over 20 years. For the past 12 years, I've been producing with multiple platforms, including new media, features, podcasts, and scripted content. I go back and forth from LA to Atlanta to New York. So I am all across the nation, and have production managed, produced on major network shows for Hulu, most recently at Tyler Perry Studios. And I've had multiple projects in several film festivals nationwide and worldwide, actually. And recently was nominated for two Emmy Awards, two daytime Emmy Awards. Recently won a Webby Award, and recently won several film festivals. Yeah, so that's a brief, and I have several state and corporate clients that I work with in the political entertainment world as well.
Cool.
Great. And Angelica sent a quick, what is it? Would you call this trailer, reel, something like that for some of the stuff you're
just a short little reel of a couple of projects that I've produced, I guess.
Great. Well, here we go. That was short, but awesome. Yeah, and if anybody wants to find out more, I think, what is it? Tell Me a Story Productions is the website to go to.
.com.
Awesome. Well, and moving right along, Jamie, why don't you give us a brief introduction to yourself?
Was I supposed to have a video prepped, or do you have a video?
I asked if people had stuff, and you're the only one who didn't send something, so I have the Rasputin trailer queued up.
You're a saint. So I started puppets, I guess when I was a kid. I started making puppets a bit, and costumes. I was really into making Halloween costumes, scary ones. And I kind of decided to make a cast of puppets when I was 19. And I got a job very young at YTV, the Canadian Nickelodeon, kind of like the kids channel. And I puppeteered constantly to fill the commercials every half hour for a few minutes. And then I've had a long career of making puppets. I made a show called Nanoland. I made a show called Mr. Meaty in the States, and I don't know, a bunch of other big and small. And my love of costumes, to talk about the short film I made with Handmade Puppet Dreams. I found these costumes online, these photographs of these royalty that were wearing these outlandish costumes that look from the 17th century. And I was like, wow, they're photographs though. Like, what, who are these? And it was the Tsar, and it was his princess, and it was a bunch of the Russian royalty. And I was like, wow, they dressed like they were from the 1700s, like during, this century, or last century. And so I learned more about the story, and then I got introduced to Rasputin, of course, a bit more. And it was just such a sort of crazy time of history of amazing opulence. And I love the idea that I could make this opulence in miniature. I could just make the most glorious castle from history in miniature. So that's why I kind of got interested. And then I found out that those crazy costumes that I was so enthralled with at the beginning was a costume party. It was a ball a costume ball in 1907, who the Tsar was famous for. They were famous for their costume balls, and because they were rich people and they had access to the royal costumes of the 1700s. That's why they looked so. So if you ever want to look at the costumes, just Google it. King Nicholas.
I was going to say, your movie has some pretty good costumes as well, but are those not as elaborate as the ones you initially saw?
They were my puppets, my best puppet try. I didn't have to use real gold. I could use just gold thread, but yeah, they were pretty, that was the fun part, and making castles.
Yeah. Well, if you're done giving a brief intro, I'll go ahead and show the trailer so people can have a bit of an idea.
Sure.
Grigory Rasputin.
Gregory Rasputin.
Our friend Gregory. Moi? I hate him so much. Whoops, Johnny. Whoops, Johnny.
I've heard of your great gifts.
The nose is definitely floral, but the mouthfeel, mossy.
We've got to kill him, Dimitri!
So definitely one for the kids. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jamie, for joining. And I think that basically goes through all of the people that are here for this roundtable. And so starting off with kind of the most obvious question for everybody, what has your general experience been with film festivals, and kind of intertwined with that, how has that changed at all with the pandemic?
We just jumping in, or is everybody going to direct the question?
Yep. Everybody just go ahead, and it's a round table. It's meant for us. If we were in other times, it might actually be around a table. But yeah, we're definitely free to just talk about it. If anybody wants to jump in, if not, I'll start calling on you.
I can start. I'm happy to start. I have entered into multiple film festivals, way more than I have been accepted into. But of the ones that, once you actually get accepted into those festivals and you have a project that is an official selection, of those official selections, it's then really exciting when you can win a film festival. And I have done that as well. And sometimes there's different levels of how you can win film festivals. They have jury picks versus audience picks, things like that. Sometimes there's like a best film award or a best actor award or things like that. And so I've kind of been around all of those scenarios. As well as, prior to, the world of the pandemic and how things were a lot, I don't want to say easier, but but with the pandemic and considering that not being able to actually be in the festival energy and be in the space and actually be able to network with folks at an actual venue. One thing about it being online is that you're able to kind of be across the globe. I was able to attend AFM the last 2 years virtually. Now, normally it's in Santa Monica, which is very convenient for me, but for a filmmaker that's, say, in China, it's really difficult for them to just fly to Santa Monica. So AFM was extremely more accessible to filmmakers all across the globe, and we were able to really connect in that kind of way. And so really being able to meet people that would normally not be able to afford a plane ticket across the globe, but to be able to be there virtually did make a difference for everybody involved. I'll stop there.
Hey guys.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
Well, I think it's interesting, that we haven't really been able to be in spaces with one another to go to a festival in that way. So in some ways, the film festivals, I feel like, lost a bit of their strength, because really we are our own publishers, I think, now in so many ways, and creating the buzz about something isn't really having, the 150 or 200 people in a room to see your film. It's the way you promote it on Insta stories and Facebook stories and TikTok stories. And I think that it's interesting. It'll be nice now that we'll be able to go to movies again and go to festivals, and maybe that can change back a little bit. But I think, it is a very expensive. It is. I totally agree with Angela. It's really great to win awards. It makes it all worth it. It actually does, actually. So that's why you still want to get in those film festivals.
Yeah. And I want to thank for anybody here that being able to get awards can be helpful, even with the social media and even with all of that self-promotion, because you can list stuff that list accomplishments rather than purely the film.
True. Yeah.
And I know I'll touch on a little bit on that later with Angelica, just having had success and having been nominated for awards with stuff shot and completed and gone through the process entirely within the pandemic as well. Christine, did you have any thoughts or things you wanted to say?
Sure. Yeah. Since this was the first film I ever directed myself, I've been to film festivals before this, but this is the first time that I went with my film. It was a really interesting process. First of all, I didn't know quite and just to get into some of the nitty gritty, it's like I didn't know how expensive it was going to be. First of all, it's like you just keep throwing money out there and hope that you get some response. And I heard that I submitted to over 100 film festivals, and I was told that if you get like 10%, if you get in like 10%, that's considered a pretty good percentage. So I did better than that. So I thought, okay, this is pretty good. But it is kind of interesting in terms of like, when you make a short film, who is your audience? Where do you find the people that you want to reach? Why did you make the film? I have one friend who's a producer that said, if you're going to make a short film, make sure that it's something that is that could be lengthened into a feature, or there's some other way to market it, because you can't make any money with short films. But it was like, well, but this is the film I wanted to make. So I don't see this ever becoming a feature, but I can see kind of the wisdom of his words, because you can't make money really as a short filmmaker, but it can also be a calling card for something to launch into something else. But my experience with it was that it's really fun to win awards. I agree with both of you guys, but just going to a film festival is really awesome, because you have an opportunity to actually share your art, share the thing that you've made with other people that probably have never seen anything like it, especially if it's a puppet film, because people still don't quite, like, they understand animation, they understand, humans, actors, but puppets is kind of like a whole different take on things. And I've submitted under experimental, I've submitted under animation, usually under animation. And that's usually where I get response from people. So yeah. Oh, and the difference between the before times and now, the pandemic times, I think primarily it's like, it's really exciting to be in the room with other people that you get to actually, talk to. And then you meet other filmmakers and find out what other people are doing. And, which I guess you could do too at AFM. I've never been to AFM, but I think that there are opportunities to kind of meet other people. Like Jamie and I went to Germany because we went to a film festival to show our films there. And it was such a fun, wild adventure, and to hang out with all these wonderful German people that stay up till 4 a.m. smoking cigarettes and drinking. It was just such a delight, right? It was great. So that's a kind of, it kind of gives you those opportunities to kind of like mix with other people, like-minded people. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about the whole film festival circuit. So
Yeah.
Can I add one thing to that, Alex? To
yeah, go ahead.
one of the things that Christine was saying, you know, awards are exciting, and those are great things to add to your your own real and life and experiences. That's great. But one of the big things about making those like working really hard to tell your story is to get your film to its intended audience. And the film festival circuit helps you get your film to its intended audience because film festivals have distributors. Film festivals have other producers that if you create your short film, we were specifically talking about short films with Christine, and no, you can't really sell your short film, but what you can do is you can sell that idea that the short film has in it, right? And that idea is that IP. That IP can then be broken down into a digital series or a traditional theatrical series or into a full-on feature. And so you take that IP and you bring it, and distributors will see that and say, okay, I want to invest in this IP, or I want to distribute this IP. And that is the big reason on why you want to get your film to film festivals, so that it can get to its intended audiences with larger distribution.
Yeah. And one thing I want to follow up to Christine talking about like AFM, as somebody who has been to AFM and representing Handmade Puppet Dreams as well, they are different entities, I would say. Like film festivals have a much more camaraderie almost feel to them. Like you're there with fellow filmmakers, and some people like Christine, you made Amaterasu because that was a story that was important to you. You didn't want to make Amaterasu the series or the movie or something like that. It was taking this mythology and turning it into a short piece. And there can be kind of an openness for that, as well as sometimes a more casual atmosphere. Whereas something like AFM, while I'm not saying I disliked it, I really enjoyed myself there. It is very much about buying and selling and more direct promotion. There's a purpose for it. I would almost say, like, if it were me, I'd probably want to go to the festival circuit and then go to AFM or something, because that's when I'm like, okay, I have all these stats, I have all these connections, and maybe even running into connections at AFM. Because ironically, Christine, one of the main people I met up with and helped out at AFM outside of Handmade Puppet Dreams was Melody Gunn, who did the music and sound design for Amaterasu. So yeah, all the worlds are connected. It's just kind of trying to figure out what the best path is for what your goal is. And with that, I just wanted to note that we do have a bit of a weird, there can be a bit of a difficult climb with short films, in that we as audiences have been, I guess, trained but to really enjoy feature films. Like, it's a movie, it's a feature film, they're long, they're big, but also it's easier to put out. If you're going to pay money and all of the resources needed to project something or go to a theater or something, it needs to be a certain length to kind of justify that. But I do feel that short films can be an art form, and in my opinion, and I've always felt this way, a very valid art form. I personally love watching shorts, and I love streaming services that allow you to watch shorts and that can try to monetize it. But if you don't have that end goal, there can be a bit of a struggle. And actually not trying to self-promote, but kind of am. But one of the things that I've always really loved about Handmade Puppet Dreams was that it was trying to help puppetry films continue to be seen, or puppetry short films continue to be seen, when not only did they have the stigma of being a short film against them, but the stigma of being a live performance puppetry film. And that's something I've always very much admired, was trying to just keep that cycle going where people can continue to have inspiration and admiration for some of these, brilliant films done in short form.
Yeah, can I piggyback on that? Because
yeah.
One of the things that I was really grateful for, not just getting a grant to be able to make my film, but then to be part of the Handmade Puppet Dreams library, because now it can actually get shown. Well, it's on Amazon Prime for one thing, but it also has been out there in the world as part of a group of films that gets shown. When I went to the Handmade Festival in Montreal, which was kind of a bizarre experience, which I'd be happy to tell you about at some point. But one of the things that was great is that a lot of people, my film was listed as part of the whole grouping of films from Handmade Puppet Dreams. So a lot of people came, not just for my film, but they came to see them all. And we had a really in-depth conversations about animation and about puppetry. And it really was helped me see how much people actually responded to puppet films and how much they really enjoy them. It was sometimes when they don't even quite know, what they're going to be seeing, because they don't understand quite what the concept of a puppet film is until they know. And again, it's like they know what animation is. Of course, my film also is kind of weird because it's found object marionettes, which is kind of a couple steps beyond. It's like it's not Muppet style hand puppets. So it's like, well, then what is it? There's that kind of learning curve that goes along with it. So I think that that's also part of it, is being able to find the other films that can get programmed together. And I do think there's still interest in short films. I mean, there's still Oscar categories for short films, but we just don't have the opportunities. I mean, in LA, there are opportunities. It's like KPCC has this, come see all the Oscar nominated films. There are some opportunities, but it seems like and with TikTok, those are really short, but and also, I mean, just online, there are more opportunities, I think, than there used to be in a way, and yet there's also a glut of product that's not great. So it's trying to find the venues and the other people that are doing good work.
Yep. And before we go on to the next question, in terms of finding an audience for short films, my hope is that becomes more and more acceptance for short films, and even for standalone short films. And I would say with streaming services, even something like Disney Plus has been releasing more and more short films. A lot of streaming services have been putting stuff like that, making that stuff like that available, either in collections or standalone. And, I really do hope that that's something that can build up, because people sometimes don't want to watch a full feature film. Sometimes they just want to get a little glimpse of an idea or a concept or whatnot that hasn't been sometimes forcibly stretched beyond its story. But going back to film festival themselves, we have some questions. So how do you all decide which film festivals to enter, and how do you get started with that process?
I mean, I guess I'll start. One of the really important things is to know the intended audience of your film. And so there are so many different film festivals out there. You can go to sites like Film Freeway, and you can make a very specific search of, you're looking for a film festival where you want to just enter in puppet scripts, or music videos or short films or whatever it is that your niche is, your category, even like if it's a horror film, like there are very specific festivals that are catered to the specific genre, the specific style, the specific medium of your film. So really pay attention to all those different outlets for your project. That's number one. Number two is there's a list of film festivals that are specific to making sure if you want to get major eyeballs on your product, if you want your product to become a theatrical release, there are very specific film festivals that you want to enter into to get it seen in front of certain distributors. The South by Southwest, Berlin, Cannes, all those major Tribeca, major film festivals. Those are the festivals that you want to enter into for if you're looking to take it in a theatrical way and get major distribution. So it all just depends on what it is you're trying to do. You can also go to sites like Film Freeway and you can say, oh, I'm looking for just film festivals that are BAFTA qualifying or film festivals that are just Oscar qualifying. And you can do your search engine that way and you're able to apply to just those film festivals. It gets very, very expensive to apply to film festivals. So definitely be strategic. Plan out the 5 to 10 festivals you want to enter into and apply to those places and make your strategy that way. And that's something that you would want to do while you're in the planning process of your film production. That should happen within pre-production, production phases, not just after you have a completed film.
I wish I'd met Angelica when I was in my pre-production planning, because that would have been really good advice. Because I didn't really know much about film festivals when I started out. Just to piggyback on what Angelica was saying, it can be very expensive. And I've been to a couple of workshops about, how to navigate film festivals. And there are books, there's all kinds of stuff out there to kind of learn. But there are some, heavy hitter kind of like Tribeca, like what Angelica was saying. I think I entered a couple of those and I didn't get in any of those. It wasn't even, I wasn't surprised at all. I did, however, work on a documentary that had animation in it with a friend of mine. And that film got accepted to Slam Dance. And so we went to Slam Dance, and it was such an amazing education to see how a really, really good film festival can run. It really was like, I guess, I haven't really been to Sundance, but Slam Dance was, that to me now is the standard of what a film festival can be. So I also highly recommend going to film festivals wherever you can and just, see how they do it, see what the interviews are like, see how they treat people, go to the parties, there's workshops, panels, all kinds of things that a lot of film, well, at least Slam Dance did. They vary. They're so not created equal. They really vary in how they present material and how they take care of the filmmakers. So let's see, what else was I going to say? It was really good. Now I can't remember what it was, but
well, while you're thinking about that, Christine, one thing I just want to note, like for people watching this, is you noted Sundance or Slam Dance, not Sundance, and I just wanted to note that they are siblings of each other. So Slam Dance was essentially, from what I know, was created because Sundance had become so pop. It had become bigger stars and companies and stuff like that, that the original purpose of Slam Dance kind of had gotten pushed aside. And in an effort to bring it back to more of the indie and experimental roots, Slam Dance was created.
It was created by just a few guys that didn't, like 25, 30 years ago, and they didn't get into Sundance, and they were like, this sucks, let's do our own. So they started doing Slam Dance, and Slam Dance is kind of like a punk version of it. It's like all the films there's sort of like a subversive kind of something behind the film, that whereas Sundance is sort of more Jamie's going in circles. Sundance has more of kind of, it is kind of like this. It's like the grown-up version. Slam Dance is like the teenager version or something. There's kind of like the year that I went, the film that won the audience award was this really weirdo stop motion animation puppet film that was a feature. I don't think it's ever gotten distribution, but it's just this really weird film that I didn't even really like it that much, but to tell you the truth, but it was definitely a slam dance feel. The other thing about submitting for film festivals is make sure that you read all the guidelines. And if it doesn't seem like it's going to be a fit, just don't spend the money for it. And there's very, very few categories for puppetry, but once in a while you do find one, and they usually are very happy to look at your film. And that usually you have to like submit under animation. And I've been told too, it's really good to write a letter, because you have the option of writing a letter with it. And then other people say it doesn't really matter, they don't look at the letter anyway. So I don't know. It's really hard to navigate this because there's a lot of unknowns.
I would love to chime in there with what Christine just said in terms of like writing letter. I think that artist statements or director statements are definitely important. And one of the things that you can do, again, this is all about strategy, reaching out directly to the festival directors. Anytime there is any kind of festival, if you go to that festival's website, somewhere on the festival's website, you will see the festival director's name. Research that person. If there isn't a phone number or an email address for the director on the website, I'm sure you can Google them, you can look them up on LinkedIn, however you would normally research a person to get to their email address, find that individual and send them a note of just, hey, this is my project, this is my film, this is what it's about. And you do oftentimes, especially with puppet films, you do need to, sometimes there isn't like specific puppet categories and you will need to come in the animation thing, but it's not the same as animation. Or you may submit under live action because there's parts of it that go in and out between puppetry and live action. And so sometimes you do need to make sure that it's clear within your artist statement or within your submission letter. And so reaching out to the festival directors is also a way to get yourself, to set yourself apart and get your project selected. Yep.
And bouncing off that real quick, from experiences I've had, and also, but just even as a cinematographer, going to festivals with other filmmakers, especially those who really understand the circuits and stuff like that, relationships are a big thing. It's building a relationship with that festival, with the people, and even but a good relationship, and like, let's say a film that wins the right awards, there's a certain point where you're not even necessarily applying anymore. There can be a point where people are asking you, when is your next film coming out? When, can we add your film? Can we add your film to our festival? And so
they'll give you the discount.
Yeah. Or sometimes they just add it. Sometimes they'll just be like, we're putting this in because we like it. And so there's definitely different routes you can go to doing that. If you have less money, being very strategic. I also know people that just send it to literally every festival and thank every festival just to try to build as big a network as possible. But I feel like you have to have a good financial grounding to be able to do that. And that's not always possible. And let's see here. One thing I wanted to ask. So, and Angelica, I know you know a bit more about this, but everybody, timing. What are there things to keep in mind about timing? When is good to submit your film? What things need to be kept in mind when looking at festivals to submit to?
Please make sure you have BTS stills. Behind the scenes stills are super, super, super important for marketing purposes, publicity purposes, and for like building your EPK, your electronic press kit. For building that, you will need to submit those to the film festivals. They need those. The key art is also a part of your EPK. So you want to make sure that you have key art, that you have stills that you can submit with the festival, or even clips, little 15-second clips of like your different various actors or like best actor categories and things like that. And so work with your editors in post while you have them, and try not to go to them after the fact. Also, one of the things that you want to keep in mind in terms of timing. So that's just some of the deliverable things that you will need to have when you're submitting for the festivals, or if once you get accepted into the festivals, they're going to ask you for deliverables, and those deliverables will include the EPK, the stills, the key art. But prior to that, in thinking about timing, if you have a project, if you have a film festival and the film festival is in May, just think usually 3 months prior to the film festival happening, 3 to 4 months prior, that's when they're going to open up submissions. And so you're going to need to submit 4 months before that starts. So that's like, say, February. If it's a May thing, it's like February when you're submitting. So then you need to make sure that your completed film is actually completed by that February date. So working backwards that way, if you know you want to submit for a festival in May, you know you need to submit by the February date. So everything's got to actually be finished by then. So then you can then say, okay, well, I've got to be done with post by February. I'm going to need 4 weeks for post. So I've got to be finished with production by January. Well, then I'm going to need 2 weeks to shoot. Well, then I need to make sure I get it done in shoot in December. And, so you work backwards that way, so that you can kind of figure out your timing of how you want to plan things out. And so just pay attention to the date of your festival and work backwards.
And following up on that, is there any is there any thought about what festivals you're looking at, and when you start applying, if you're looking at even, say, bigger awards? Like if you're trying to reach even farther, is there stuff to keep in mind? Because I know sometimes there are cutoffs and this and that.
Yeah. So end of year cutoffs, basically all of the major awards. So this is separate from festivals or markets. When you're looking at major award shows, if you're looking at Emmys or NAACP awards or GLAAD awards, any type of like major award show, something that's televised, which they absolutely all accept short films. So just keep that in mind, or series, digital content, all of that stuff is applicable for these award shows. And they're not as expensive as you would think. They're just as expensive as some of the film festivals. So just keep that also in mind. Anyway, but most of those have end of year cutoff dates. A lot of them are around December 1st, November 30th, December 1st, December 15th, or December 31st cutoff dates. So in anything that you want to submit for an award year, you want to make sure that you wrap production by November 30th or by December 15th, depending on which award show you're applying to, because the application to start the award show submission is most likely going to be in December or in January. And that's pretty much for all of the award shows.
Great, thank you.
I just want to, piggyback. And once again, piggyback on that. I was nowhere near that strategic when I was submitting for film festivals. But one of the things I did find that was kind of fascinating is that film festivals really like something that's new. They don't want a film that's like 2 years old or something. They want something that's new that you just finished. So if you are looking to submit for something, you want to kind of keep that timely. Like if you're making a film, especially if it's timely in some way, that you want to make sure that you get it done in time so that you can actually get it out there in the world in a way that's going to make sense for the project. Does that make sense? It's like I get emails every so often. It's like, do you want to submit to this film festival? And it's sort of like, well, I finished my film when it was 2000, almost 4 years ago. And there's almost no film festivals that want a film that's 4 years old. So it's like, no, this isn't really going to work. So that's something to kind of educate yourself along the way as you're making your film, or even before you make your film, what the film festival world is like. and I know that some people have been asking about how do you know what film festival? And then I know that Jamie's, I think you haven't talked at all yet, but I think that you've submitted for comedy festivals as well as under puppet or fantasy or those other categories. So there's, my film was not a comedy. I thought, well, next time I'm going to make a comedy, because there's comedy film festivals out there that you can actually submit to. But that's just not the film I made. What else? Anyway, I just want to also kind of talk about how you're doing it strategically. Is you kind of have to also really educate yourself to kind of all these different aspects, and it's more challenging than I realized. I know so much more now than I did when I started. So that's all.
That's why you're here, because you learned so much. Seriously though, but Jamie. I'd love to hear.
You guys have got so much really recent good information. Is it still $50-$60 per application? I wonder that. And then, I wonder if people have mentioned those aggregate sites. Like it's sort of like it probably takes about 2 weeks of full days of just kind of like uploading, describing, making posters and picking fonts and but once you get it, there's these aggregate sites that have a bunch of film festivals that they represent, and your film is already uploaded there. So that does save a lot. Like I think back in some day, you used to actually have to send DVDs or tapes to all the festivals. The good thing now is they have these aggregate sites, and so I think there's 5 that I got on, and then you could get to about 10 or whatever. 10 festivals that you want on each one of those. But that was pretty handy. And I was just thinking about the budget. It is really true that there's almost like it's a third of your budget is the making of the film. The second third would be doing the sound. The sound is a huge expense and work to make it great. And the third is the marketing and the film festivals. And that's a kind of be great to look at it that way from the beginning, because it definitely cost 3 times more than I thought it would.
Yeah. Well, and in that, I just wanted to add, don't forget, film is an audio visual medium, not just a visual medium and not just an audio medium. So those are, and it does get dismissed a lot. People want, as a cinematographer, I can say, like, I've shot things that I was super proud of that did horrible jobs on the sound. And I've even been like, told that like my cinematography, that's a little subpar, not your best work, compared to stuff that I know from my experience was much, that was much better than other content. But since this content had better sound, they even viewed, my work as being better.
Yeah, sound is a fascinating. It's the invisible art. When you're making a film, it's what you feel. And to make it costs money and skill to make it invisible, so that you're not thinking about how their voice sounds. You're listening to the content of the words. And you're not thinking about the sound effects and the way they're moving through the room, because it's all so natural. And that gift of making the invisible art invisible is the other half of filmmaking.
Yep. And with that, and one of the reasons I mentioned it as well is keep that in mind as well when you're showing people your films. If you're sending a film out, because I know sometimes some festivals do allow you to send in a rough cut. But if your rough cut has no music and has very wonky sound effects and everything else, people are going to take your film in a very different way than even your final film may be. So be sure to keep stuff like that in mind. Or even if you're exporting or uploading a film, don't try not to sacrifice anything as much as possible, but especially the sound, as something that I've seen sacrificed a number of times. But Jamie, one question I had, or one thing I wanted to segue into, and I think you're a great segue for that, is like ratings. If there's any issues on, I want to go into ratings and length, but I'm going to kind of start with that. In like, you have a film and it's also a puppet film, but it's definitely has some graphic nature to it. And, but it's also comedic at the same time. So like, and this can kind of go out to everybody, in terms of content, what things have you faced? Like, does rating seem to have a matter? Does the type of film it is? Christine says the next film she does will be a comedy because there's more comedy festivals. What kind of stuff like that do you guys take into account, or have you found?
I definitely, I didn't find it limited it. I've made so much children's television, so it felt good to make something funny. And I think comedy does take it places. And I was actually more going almost like vaudeville. It's like you're going for the tickets. We got entertainment here. I like making stuff that's truly, the crowd will throw you a penny to watch. So, and I hope it has that element.
Angelica?
Yeah, if I could jump in with ratings, the good news is about most film festivals, you don't have to like actually pay for an MPAA rating or something like that. So that's an expense you don't have to worry about. That's number one. But also, if you do have something that's more adult content, just be more mindful of the film festivals that you're actually submitting for. That goes back to that planning phase and that strategy phase of what is most appropriate, what is the intended audience, because the intended audience, that's why there's so many different film festivals out there. There are film festivals that are towards the adult gaze or towards towards children's gaze, and so you want to make sure that you are applying to the festivals that make sense for your intended audience for that particular film. Not every single, if you're the filmmaker and you've got 3 projects and one is definitely for kids and one is definitely not, you're submitting to 2 completely different festivals. You should not be submitting those 2 films to the same festival because they have very different audiences. And so again, just keep that piece of it in mind. Regarding length, every single festival, when you're applying, there's very specific rules. Read those rules and regulations. It will say that our short films are capped at 20 minutes or capped at 45 minutes or whatever that number is. Pay attention to those things. Don't submit a project that is much longer than the allotted time, because then you're wasting your money at that point. You won't get selected. Submit to the places that want the content that you have. If they say it's 20 minutes max and your film is 19 minutes, submit. If it's 25 minutes, email the director. If it's 30 minutes, don't submit to that one, submit to a different one. So those are things to really, really keep in mind and to really pay attention to. Time limits are definitely important. So definitely pay attention to that. And if you're not in those times, then just submit to another festival and save those dollars and allocate them to another festival.
Yep. And one thing I wanted to add there, in terms of definition of what is a short film and what is a feature film, usually 45 minutes is kind of that barrier, where it turns from a short to a feature. Though one thing I also wanted to note is that even if, let's say, they have a time limit for short films like 20 minutes, keep in mind I'm trying to think the good way to say this, programming within a festival. So the shorter your film is, the more chances it might be selected, because there's more possibilities for it to be fit into a program. And like I've done film festival stuff at, say, puppetry festivals, and I know for a fact that there are films that may not have made the cut when I got all the ratings from all the judges and stuff like that, but they were short enough that in order to kind of fill a block of films, it's like, okay, cool, we have this 7-minute film, it can fit into this slot. Or even looking at content, it's like, hey, we've got 2 7-minute films that are both good, we can have both of those, even if that takes place of one 14-minute film that might be just as good as both the other films. But also, if a festival, and like with that, I wasn't concerned about who's going to show up or anything in those regards, but some festivals do care. They do care that you're able to be there and you can do a Q&A and you can be present. And so then they're looking at that saying, okay, well, we have all of these films, if we can put in 2 good 7-minute films and double our chances of having filmmakers for the talk back and having, these positive things, that'll be better than the 1 14-minute film. That is, don't, overcut your film down and don't sacrifice things, but it shorter can be a little bit easier. But even then, if you're going onto something like social media, Facebook, YouTube, stuff like that, people are much more willing to watch a 7-minute film than a 14-minute film even there. So then you can continue with that success, especially if that is enough time to convey the idea, the concept, the story that you're trying to get across. Yeah. And does anybody want to add on to this? If not, I want to jump into categories.
Yeah, just quickly, I was accepted to one film festival in Boston, I believe, and I talked to the director a little bit. I couldn't go to the film festival, but I did talk to the director some, and I said, it's really fascinating. Just talking about the whole film festival situation. I said, yeah, I haven't been accepted to that many and all this. And he was like, well, if you could get your film under 10 minutes, then you would have a much better chance because of the whole programming timing thing. And I just said, and I thought about that. I thought, well, could I do that? And I went, no, the film is what it is. So I think you also need to make sure that you have integrity with what you are making and not try and kind of fill a slot somewhere, but also knowing that I've also been on the other side of that a little bit with, watching some films, and boy, there's so many films out there, and to try and put together a film, it's like, and it may not be personal at all. I mean, it's not personal. It's like, they may already have a marionette, short film. They don't need 2. So they choose the other person's instead of mine, so anyway, that's all. I just wanted to throw that into the mix.
And I hate to say this, but sometimes it might even be that they didn't watch your film, which is where building a relationship when you can goes into effect. But I have a friend who, what is it? She submitted to festivals using almost only or primarily a Vimeo link. I think it was through Film Freeway, but she had it turned on, and this is something other people can do as well, where you see whenever somebody's watched the content. If somebody clicks watch on it, you can see that they've done so. And at least, and I don't know if there's any restrictions to that, like if they do it under a certain whatever, but she was very shocked and dismayed of how low the number was of views versus how many festivals she submitted to, even though she got a sorry, you didn't make it this time from all of the festivals. And I don't, but even accounting for some of them maybe using, having a program that didn't register with Vimeo, there's still, I feel like is a chunk that they may have just looked at the cover photo or the photo on the front or something and just went, nah, pass. But yeah, but I do know in general for like reels and for a lot of content, something that's always been said is like the first 15 seconds is when somebody kind of decides if they're going to stick with it or not. And I feel like that can be especially hard because honestly, really great cinema builds, and even a short, builds to a climax. So it's kind of a toss up of how do you, is it just the cover photo? What can you do to make somebody want to watch it in its entirety? But speaking of watching things and in their entirety, I wanted to jump into the importance and annoyance of film festival categories. Because unfortunately, we live in a world that loves to categorize literally everything. And if something doesn't fit our prescribed categories, we don't know what to do with it. And live performance puppetry film, unfortunately, falls into that, where for a lot of festivals and even for awards, and I'm talking bigger awards, I'm talking, Academy Awards and this and that, there's, all of these, what I consider very outdated or confining restrictions as to what is live action, what is animation, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, if you have a, say, non-Muppety puppet film, and by Muppety, I don't just mean hand and rod and moving like this. I mean, you know, the Muppets almost always are counteracting or always living in a real world, often with real human guests. And so it does really kind of base itself in the human world. But something like a lot of these Handmade Puppet Dreams films, and Christine, your film, and Jamie, your film, you know, there is no human element to it. It is done almost in the same way that you would do stop motion animation, except it's shot live. And from my experience, you know, festivals and even organizations just have no idea what to do with it because it doesn't fit in their pre-described categories. And I guess I'd like to open it up for everybody to speak about that, especially Jamie and Christine, having two very different films yet facing kind of similar challenges. Whoever wants to start. Jamie, why don't you start? And please unmute yourself, Jamie.
Okay. Yes, I don't have a whole lot of answers for that. Like, you know, mine kind of got into a few genre festivals, kind of horror like kind of thing, or so there's kind of, and there definitely is always an animation section. So I think they're often pleased to have a puppet film because it's quite unlike anything else. So if you can squeeze it in and they're delighted by the medium, that is a great ticket. But it is true. It's like, it's not drama. It's not, action.
Yeah.
Adventure.
Except they could be. And that's the thing. A puppetry
Yeah, it
film,
could be sci-fi. It could be anything.
Yeah, it could be sci-fi. It can be comedy. It can be drama. It can be comedy. It can be a mix. But on top of that, even now, you know, we have animation. Even now, like say at the Oscars, you have animation category. There's no categories within that category. So you can have like a really, really good dramatic animated film, and you could have a really good comedic Pixar film, and they're competing with each other for the same category because we don't make those distinctions.
Yeah.
So
I do think
what are your...
This is one thing I do, if I were to say something kind of I find interesting about puppets, I think that they actually work best in shorts because there's a certain amount of just kind of belief that people have, like kind of like a leap of faith when you're looking at an inanimate object. And for some reason, I think in theater, it breaks through to the audience more often, and you can get away with kind of abstract things. But I think if you were to have to watch an abstract, sort of like a rock or, you know, a stick or something, an entire 2 hours, I think it takes a real special love of puppets for that kind of audience. But, you know, for short films, people are like, okay, let's try this out. I'm going to jump in. And I don't know if they'd stick around for a whole movie, but they would stick around for a short film to kind of like make that leap of faith into your inanimate object.
Yeah, and I think that would be an experimental film if it's just a stick and a rock, you know, sitting there for 15 minutes.
I think we should make that. We should make that film, Jamie.
Okay.
Rock and stick together again.
Rock and stick. You will feel the drama, the drama. And that will go right into the drama section.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Drama genre.
Yeah. And I think this is a slightly different subject, but it might be helpful to people watching as well when thinking about your film. But like to what Jamie said with theater and use of puppetry and stuff like that, I've always believed and found that like with theater, we inherently our imagination is inherently activated. We are walking in, we're sitting in a seat, we're seeing a plank, somebody's doing something. You can even pretend to grab a cup of coffee and drink it. But because we see the whole theater around us and we see the people moving around on the stage, our mind is always expanding it. You can have two props that can show a world because our brain is going to make a world out of that. Whereas anything on screen literally is framed. you know, and on like an older TV literally is framed. And so we're looking at a framed picture that is moving, and we're being presented that as if it is the world. And so, you know, like having Christine, for you, having the strings, having the marionette strings in your film, I absolutely love that. But I know, you know, one of the questions I feel like you've been asked quite a bit at festivals is, why did you choose to do that? Why didn't you remove them and stuff like that? And one thing I love about Amaterasu is that it has just enough theatrical quality that in a weird way, it almost excuses, it lets us go into this theatrical world that is expanded. And the introduction you have where we go into your old stage from the original live show, I think helps bring the audience there, where, yeah, we can see strings and rods and this and that. We know they're puppets. We know there's performers. We saw the performers scurrying around during the opening credits. And that lets us dive into it. But that is an issue that we can run into with puppets, live performance puppets, is that, you know, you almost want to create an environment where it is okay for the audience to be seeing things that they've been trained to think might be mistakes. And that can also change what categories you're putting stuff in. Because I know some puppet films go great in like experimental and whatnot. And Jamie, I feel like you were about to say something. Sorry, Angelica.
Yeah, I was
No,
actually about to just chime in
take it
on
away.
there with that, Alex, about the experimental portion, because a lot of times the exact same film, like if you have a film and you are applying to 3 different film festivals or 5 different film festivals, that exact same film may, like, depending on the film festival, it might be completely different categories that you would want to enter that same film into, depending on that actual festival, because that festival may have something that's a little bit more specific that makes more sense for your film, or you would have a better chance of winning a category depending on the category of that actual festival. So just because it's, you know, animation at this festival doesn't mean that it won't or shouldn't be considered experimental in the other in another festival. And so that's really, really important. And so don't just like close your mind to be like, okay, well, these other 10 festivals said I should be in animation, so I'm just going to enter in animation. Like, really read through those festivals and see those details of what they're asking for within that category, because you may actually perform better in a different category than what you're used to submitting into. And one other thing that I wanted to add into there, which is just kind of a general thing, is don't be in a rush to post your film to like YouTube or to your website, your completed project, because you can disqualify your film from being entered into a festival. A lot of times film festivals want to be the first to exhibit your film. So if you post it online or if you post it to your website, then you can disqualify yourself. So also keep that in mind when you are submitting to various film festivals. And if you have it up and you want to like change, you can take it down real quick.
Yeah.
that happens too.
Well, and Angelica, what about festivals themselves? Like, do you want to think about the order of sending to festivals if they all want to be the first one?
Yeah. And so, and every festival they'll have like, they'll ask you questions like, is this the first time it's exhibiting at any festival worldwide versus is this the like LA release or West Coast release or North America release? You know, if it's the first in North America, or if it's the first in this state, or if it's the first in this city, or versus the first worldwide. So those kinds of things. Premier status, that's what they would call it. Premier status is really important to the festivals. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about which festivals you want to apply to, which ones come up first, because maybe the one that you want it to be premiering first at is in August, but there's another festival that's in May and you want to submit to that too. So maybe you wait to the following year to submit to the one that's in May so that you get that August premiere status for the other festival that you really, really want. Really think about premiere status when you are exhibiting your project.
Yep. And one thing I wanted to jump in with talking about, I guess, categories and whatnot again. And it's kind of a, it's something continually being looked at and continually in the works. But and it's a bit of unfortunate news, which is that, due to categories, there can also be conflicts. There is one point in time where there are two different films that we had in various, I think it was a commissioned film and a collected film, but from a commissioned filmmaker. It was like another film. But we had two films with Handmade Puppet Dreams, and at the same time, one of them, the Screen Actors Guild had determined was an animation film, not a puppetry film, even though they provided BTS and everything else. But also it's a great reason to get BTS so that you can prove that your film was made the way that you made it. But then at the same time, the Academy of Motion, the Academy was claiming that a different film, which had won awards and was Academy qualifying, was disqualified because it had won awards under the animation category. And they were saying, but this isn't animated, this is live action. You need to reapply to all the festivals under live action. And so, like, literally we had the Screen Actors Guild and the Academy saying, combative information on two different of our films. And I don't say that to be like, stop making puppet films. No, we need more of them. We need enough and we need good ones so that organizations have to pay attention. But it's just something to be aware of, is there is no like, this is what you should do. But from my experience and everything I know with Handmade Puppet Dreams and the films we have within it, animation seems to be one of the better categories to put your puppet film in. That being said, there still may be people that are upset. And one thing I wanted to know, we have a film, Cosmic Fling, that was a live performed marionette film. Christine was one of the performers in it, and that one did finally break through with the Academy, and they kept it on the long list without disqualifying it, even though it was a live performance puppetry film. So it's an ongoing thing, and just know that as you're making films, and but always be kind about it, always be nice about it. And there's a reason I'm not naming the films themselves, at the request of filmmakers as well, just because we want to make change. We don't want people to close down necessarily. And then also, I just there was a message put up from one of our new micro commission filmmakers, Adnan Hussein, and he noted, having submitted a marionette film to a number of festivals, I've run across the challenge of it not being accepted as animation, so it needs to be submitted as live action, but then the live action committees don't see it as live action. And so that's literally a current predicament right now as well, where the lack of category. But I think marionettes as well can be very different than, like, if you have a tabletop puppetry film, like say Yamasong, or even the feature Yamasong March of the Hollows. We had reviewers for that literally thinking that it was stop motion animation, and they're like, this is the weirdest feel for a stop motion animation film. And it's like, well, because it wasn't. It was puppetry. They just removed the rods and the people. But audiences aren't used to that yet, which is the wonderful thing, because you can present stuff that people haven't seen before, and you can do things that people haven't dealt with before. But at the same time, we love to categorize, and we love our subsections and blah, blah, blah. And so there's also some hurdles to face there as well. Christine.
Yeah, I just want to mention one thing. When I was talking to one of my friends who's a puppet filmmaker and been very successful in film festivals, and I asked him, I said, what do you usually submit under? And he said, well, usually under animation, but he said, but sometimes I will actually send them a short clip and say, this is what this is what my film looks like. This is a little clip of it. And what do you suggest? Should I submit under animation or under live action or experimental? And one of the places that I sent that to, they were very gracious, and they wrote me back, and they said, well, this looks more like it would be under animation, but if you send it to us and we think it should be in a different category, we will put it in a different category. I don't think I got into that film festival, but they were very nice. So, but anyway, but that's, I think, also another way to, create relationship with the festival itself, is to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? What do you think I should be doing with this film that's brilliant, and you should have it in your festival? So
yeah, and I think that's a great way, because as you said, Christine, it's the twofold. You're building the relationship, but you're also engaging them in that decision, potentially even at a higher level than some volunteer or employee that's watching 5,000 short films and making a quick decision. And on Facebook, Stephen Wilderman asked, do you consider the Leica films to be animation or puppetry? And just with the thought that other people may be thinking of similar things, that is animation. And for me, with Handmade Puppet Dreams, the difference I've noted is that like Leica films, I'd say I would call it a puppet film, but not a puppetry film, because it's not performed, though it's an animation film utilizing puppets. But in terms of, like, say, the Academy, when the Academy is looking at something that is animation, they are looking at it being done in 24 frames a second, animated in that way. And so and that's what a lot of festivals base their categories off of. So for festivals and whatnot, something like Leica would 100% be an animation film.
I just also wanted to mention that there are a couple of festivals that were very open to puppetry. So if someone is interested in very specifically what film festivals I could suggest, not that I could promise they'd get in, but there are a couple of film festivals that actually were very, very excited about puppet films. So I could give that information if someone wanted to contacted me, or however you want to do it.
Yeah, well, and in general, though, for you guys, especially with some of this, like, how do you find out where all of the different festivals are taking place? And where do you look when thinking about submitting to festivals?
Well, I just looked on Film Freeway, but then there's also beyond that. I know there's Annecy in France, and but almost all. I don't know how many. Maybe there's a few that are not, but most film festivals are on Film Freeway, and it's really easy to, as Angelica was saying, it's just to plug in what you're looking for, what kind of festival you're looking for. And I actually did submit to a couple of like horror/fantasy film festivals. I thought, well, let's see what happens. And I actually got into a couple, and like, my film is so not horror at all, but I think they liked having something that was a little different, that they could stick in a program and really have it, kind of be a different thing in the midst of other horror films. So you just never know exactly. But
I mean, Christine, the sun goddess got upset and plunged the world into darkness, causing pain and agony for all these people. That's a horror film.
Yeah. Well, and that horse dying was also pretty brutal. So
I will fully admit, every time that movie is screened in front of an audience, when that horse, even though it's found object marionettes, and there's even like a sway with it, so for me it's like, it's not even like, yes, it's a real horse in that, yeah, and it gets killed, the audience, without a doubt, almost every time. and for me, it's just
very
exemplary. Yeah, very pointed.
Poignant, I said.
I know.
And we should also put, are there links to where these films can be seen? Jamie's film and my film, and I don't know if that's been posted or not, but
that I don't know, just because we're streaming to various sites. But yeah. But we can definitely put stuff up, and also for people that are watching, I don't know beyond Amazon, but right now, and it is under a paywall, but it's not a very expensive paywall. Okay, and I was told that yes, they have been put in the chats. And but if not, Amazon Prime, we currently have both Christine's film Amaterasu and Jamie's film Rasputin up. And Angelica, where can we find something that you've done, like The Gaze?
Oh, The Gaze can be found at thegazeseries.com. And you can watch the entire series on the website right now. That is a 2-time Emmy-nominated Webby Award-winning Michaud Film Festival winning project that was done
Wow.
100% during the pandemic, which of course, Alex, you worked on. Yeah, it's a short digital series and anybody is able to watch it on the website at thegazeseries.com. That's GAZE series.com.
Cool.
Awesome, thank you. And I know this sounds very much like a wrap up, and we are kind of reaching a bit of a time, but we have a few, if everybody's cool with it, we have a few Facebook questions or YouTube questions I wanted to put out here before we wrap up entirely. Let's see. Interesting. I'm sorry, I'm just reading through them as well. So we have a question from Paul Zaloom. Do festivals only consider work that has not been or is currently online? Which I think is more of a sub question because we quasi answered that.
Yeah, I think we answered that. Angelica, you probably may have more of an answer, but I think for the most part, you want to try and submit your work before it goes online. So you don't, I mean, it seems like there are some film festivals that are okay with it, but generally you want to submit first. And then hopefully then after, later on down the line, then you can put it online after a million film festivals love it. So.
Yeah, win your awards first and then give it out online.
Yeah. And to that, I wanted to note two things, which is one of my favorite film festivals that I've been to. It was the oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name, Sedona Film Festival. I went with you, Christine. Thank you for inviting me along. And it wasn't a big festival. It's not a super notable festival, but just the environment that was created, the town, everything else. Like I really did have a wonderful time there. And we went to that festival and your film was screened while it was even on Amazon Prime. And that wasn't something that they necessarily cared about. They cared about creating a good environment for films and filmmakers and for people to watch stuff and watch it on the big screen, because that can also be a huge difference, seeing something on a big screen versus seeing something at home. It completely changes the experience. But also one thing I wanted to note from the side of somebody who's tried to put on festival stuff and whatnot is that I've had in the past, say with the Real Puppetry Film Festival, which is part of the Puppeteers of America National Puppetry Festival, back when that was still happening live. But I had a number of people in surveys comment that they didn't go to the film screening, the Real Puppetry Film Festival, because, well, why go to something that's pre-recorded when I can watch it on YouTube later? And that comment, and I saw that comment over and over again. And for me, that's when it truly clicked why having premiere status, but also, trying to note any sort of exclusivity can be very important, because seeing a film large can make a huge difference. Sometimes it's the way it was meant to be seen, but if people think that they can just watch it on their phone on YouTube later, not only is it doing the film a disservice, but especially the year that was said, a number of the films we had weren't going up on YouTube. I knew for a fact those films were it was more exclusive and they were losing out on opportunities. And so that's also something to consider, but also promote your film. And if your film isn't going to be everywhere, even as artists, that can be the importance of promoting that your film is at a festival and people can see it and whatnot. And Jamie, you really look like you want to say something. But you have to unmute yourself first.
I see. No, it keeps on passing. I don't have a bunch of things to say. It is very fun to go to the film festivals, though. I think that is one of the best parts. Like, now that I realize, I kind of went to probably about 3 or 4 or 5 in the end, and work it out with, there's a friend that I've never seen their house in that city, and it takes you to, if you can swing it and end up going to 5 places. It's wonderful to go to celebrate something like that.
Yeah.
And if you have another filmmaker, another person in your film, your lead actor, that kind of thing, that makes it even more fun.
Yeah,
Yep.
one other thing about that too, like one of the things that they told us before going to Slam Dance is that if you go to a festival like that, where a lot of people come from out of town and stay there, you also want to promote your film at the festival itself so that people will know about it and will come to it. And we showed Gloria's Call was a short documentary film. And we made silly hats that we wore everywhere, and everybody knew who we were because we were wearing these ridiculous hats. But people came to the film because they really wanted to see what's up with the hats and why, you know, and there were images on the hats from the film itself. So that might sound kind of dopey, but it's all about marketing to make sure that people actually do come and see your film, because it's really. I had one of the best screenings of my film was at the Burbank Film Festival. And it was like amazing. It was a huge screen. It never looked better. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I think there were about 12 people in the audience, you know, half of whom were friends of mine. And it was really, you know, it was really sad. It was great for the people that were there, but it was sad. I thought it's such a shame that this, you know, this theater is not filled up, because it was such a beautiful opportunity to see that film on a huge screen. So
Yeah, and actually that goes right into a question we have from Adnan on Facebook. Any advice on how best to leverage a film once it's in a festival? And he says, I've been to festivals with shorts in the past where mine was shown in the afternoon in a shorts program and not all that visible to most festival goers.
I'll take that one. You have to market your film. No one is a better marketer of your film than you are. And no one cares about your film the way that you do. You have to market it. So whether that means wearing t-shirts of your project, wearing hats of your project, giving out a little flyer when you're at the festival saying, hey, make sure you come to the screening at 3:15 because you know, this film will be showing. Make sure you have a ticket to that. Like, if you're at the festival and you want other people at the festival to see your project, have a little business card or have a little flyer or have a little something to encourage people to be there. If it's prior to the festival starting, then make sure you're doing as much as you can on social media, whether that is via Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, whatever your best way to get your information out there. It's also very cheap to purchase radio ads, local radio ads in the city of where the film festival will be. And place a radio ad, like things like that. Yes, that requires funding, but again, if you plan to spend the money for those publicity purposes, for those marketing purposes, and you plan for that in your budget up front, then you know, hey, I've got $3,000 for film festivals, for the marketing materials, all those other things, and that's where this money is going to be spent. That's how we're going to allocate it, so you can get the word out there, because no one else is going to care about marketing your film the way you are.
Yep. And just as an example, we have a film, Harker, and I just went and grabbed this. So this is an older film anyways, but you know, here's an example. They have a bigger postcard, and honestly, I do recommend the bigger ones for even for myself. I'm more likely to pick this up and maybe even keep it as a keepsake. And they have the website down here so people can check it out. They have the information. Back here, they have credits as well as a description of the film. My one thing would be, it'd be even better if they have stills from the film somewhere. But also, like right here is a blank spot so that wherever they go, they can either, you know, maybe it's just a personal note, but you can also print off the information for that specific festival and just place it there with each festival you're at. And that can be, yeah, a big important thing to do.
Exactly.
Another thing I just wanted to mention too, another really great marketing thing that we did is that we made up business cards, because with postcards, they're big and they're harder to pick up, but a business card like that is really easy to pick up. And this was left over. It actually says when the screenings were. This was at Slam Dance. And then on the other side was my film, so that it could actually, so it's just another way of marketing, but it's a really useful way because it's really tiny, and then people will keep it because it's easier to hold on to, although it's very small. So maybe it's too hard to read. You know, there's a lot of different ways to market things, but and I still have these, and I can still give them out because it has my information. And then it's like, yeah, and by the way, check out this other film that I worked on. So yeah,
I was going to say we still use these from time to time, even though this film was from 2015 or no 2005, and we still have like screenings where we might use this because it's part of our collection. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah. Having space to write something, like let's say even if you put a sticker here, still don't fill up the whole white spot, leave some spot on whatever marketing stuff you're using, even if it's a business card, to allow people and promote for people to write stuff down. So maybe they want to write down a specific email or write down a note of how to remember you or something like that. That can be really important, because even for myself, I know I have come home a number of times with flyers and stuff and been like, oh my gosh, who was I talking to again? Oh man, there's no emails on here. Crap. And so it's always great to have some element where you can personalize it, but then also by personalizing it, you're increasing the chances that somebody's going to remember and respond to that.
And put it on the fridge or not throw it out.
Exactly. Especially if it's really funny. Let's see here. So this is a question that came on online. Sounds like it might take a team to make this happen. Could a solo performer / writer / director enter?
Enter into a festival?
That's what the question said, but I assume, yeah, into the festivals. Like, can a person handle that, I guess, kind of on their own?
Yes, but keep in mind that filmmaking is in fact a collaborative art. Like, it's a collaborative art for a reason. There is a lot of work, there's a lot of moving pieces. And so there are people that specialize in marketing. There are people that specialize in the functionality of producing and putting all that paperwork together. There are people that specialize in editing and cutting the right trailer that you need, or that 15 seconds spot that you need to get it to, you know, to as a clip for the festivals. So you do want to work with other collaborators. It also expands your network of individuals that you work with, or the individuals that you're in contact with in terms of building those relationships. So yeah, you can do it on your own, but know that it is a tremendous amount of work and requires a lot of bandwidth and a lot of time and a lot of energy. And keep in mind that it is a collaborative art. So if you're making a film and you're doing it by yourself, know that you're doing the work of 35 people. Just know that going in.
Yeah. Thank you, Angelica. And with that, we're going to be starting to look into round it up, or we're going to look into winding down this conversation. And the question I have for everybody is kind of the usual: are there any last things you wanted to say or make note of, or something like that? And I'll start, which is that, like, one of the things that I have found I've really enjoyed about film festivals, and I think it can be important, especially coming off of like being a solo director, performer, stuff like that, is just contacts and networking. Like, there are people that I still meet up and hang out with and do things with here in LA that I met at Dragon Con Film Festival in Atlanta, Georgia. But also people working on your films and collaborators and stuff like that. I also have been brought onto projects, or brought people onto my projects because we met at a festival and bonded, and it can expand your network of collaborators and peers as well. And for me, that has, by far been one of the most important aspects of that. To the point, I'll fully admit, there's been a few times where I've been like, I'll watch your film on my TV. It's big. Can you send me your film? But I'd rather like get to know you and watch your film later. But I don't always recommend that, because the screen, like watching something on a screen, is the way it's often meant to be seen. And it is a much different experience, especially if you don't have a good home setup. But yeah, I guess we'll go backwards. We'll start with Jamie. Any final comments from you? And unmute yourself.
Pops up for a second, just as everybody. So I think that there's nothing more. I'm from a lot of television, but I love theater, and filmmaking, sort of the perfect mix of the two of them. You get to make something, and being in an audience and hearing them laugh, where you're kind of trying to portray emotion and you don't know really where it's landing with people. You finally get to sit in an audience and watch, your inanimate object land the emotion you're trying to express. There's a really special feeling in that, and especially laughter for me. And you meant to make something funny, and it was. You're really glad, because really it's just timing and words and funny pictures. So there's something great about that element of creation. And I also think that having made a film, because it's such a giant mountain to climb all the way up to, it's nice to create something that's kind of timeless, even more timeless than a puppet, which will slowly degrade. The film could be watched forever. So it's nice the feeling of longevity you get from having created something like that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jamie. And then Chris, I just want to note, because Christine, I think after the premiere of Amaterasu, changes were also made based off of audience reaction. They were minor, it was just little adjustments here and there, but hearing an audience respond to it also helped dictate things that could improve the film. Angelica.
Have fun, make a project, never be afraid to ask for help. Keep in mind it's a collaborative art, and wherever you can save money, do that. Know that it's going to cost a lot more than you anticipate, so plan for it to cost more than you think, and then add another 5%. Yeah, but make sure you're enjoying the process, because it is a significant amount of work, and yeah, keep that in mind.
Great, thank you. Christine.
Yeah, Angelica, those were really great, great words. Because it often, it can cost a lot more. And I was actually really surprised how I needed help to make sets, to do for PAs on set itself, and I was really I felt really honored that I would ask some people. It's like, can you help me with this thing? I have no money, and I'll buy you pizza. And people did. They showed up, and they were happy to be there, and they worked hard, and it was a really fun process. So I think that having fun is absolutely something that you want to make sure that that's part of the process. I also, to something that I think Alex said earlier, is I knew from the beginning, because my puppets have no faces, that the whatever you heard was going to be really important. And so like the sound design, the Foley that I got to do, which was really fun, the voiceovers, all of the sound was actually a large part of my budget, and it was absolutely worth it, because it really made the film be as good as it could be, I think. So yeah, and it is really exciting when you've made a film to be sitting there in that dark room with a bunch of people and hearing them respond. And there were actually some comedy bits in my film that I didn't even know about until people laughed. So there's something really magical about that. So if you want to make a film, make the best film you can and enjoy it.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, I think make the best film you can and enjoy it is probably the perfect line to go out on. And so we will. Thank you all so much for participating in this roundtable. And thank you for those watching so much for watching our roundtable. In terms
Thanks
of
for throwing a round table, Alex.
I threw it. Crap.
Thank
Yes,
you.
no.
Yeah, thank you. This has really been fun.
Yeah. We've already talked about a little bit where you can see stuff, but in general, right now we have 16 short films up on Amazon Prime. They are currently under a paywall. But also fear not, we are hoping to get more films and even some special things coming to Amazon Prime in the future. And so stay tuned and thank you for tuning in.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you.